So we need to write specifications, and we need to establish our metrics, and what are we going to use to measure our goals or our constraints. So what are metrics? Well, what type of precise measurable characteristics will reflect the degree of which to this product satisfies the customer needs. So what can we measure? For example, if the car is fuel efficient, maybe that's a customer need, we want the car to be fuel efficient. We can measure that. That's pretty easy to measure. We can measure how far we can go on a gallon of gas. That would be a pretty simple example. Maybe a more difficult one to quantify is how does the car handle? Does the car handle well? That's something that the user wants, but how do you get a metric for that? Well, you can maybe look at G-forces inside the car, turning radiuses, things like that we can measure. The car must be attractive is a little more ambiguous because it's hard to measure something like that. We need maybe some customer opinions on that. So let's look at when we look at writing metrics and determining what our metrics are. We want to make sure that they're complete, that they describe the needs that we need to address. That there's enough of them, that we have enough different metrics to describe those needs, and do they thoroughly describe what we want from those. We want to make sure that these are dependent and not independent variables. We want to determine what it has to do, not how it's going to do it. So we want to make sure that we're describing the function again. What does it do, and that we can measure. And we want to make sure that they're practical, things that are easily measurable or things that we can analyze. It's helpful if we can write metrics that we can measure before we actually build something, so we can determine does our design meet those objectives before we actually have to physically build it. Some of them we have to wait till we physically try it out, or maybe we have to prototype it or something like that to determine if it's going to meet those specs. But it's helpful if we can directly measure something in order to see if we've met our specification. And we want to make sure that they're quantifiable if possible. The ones that weren't a little harder to quantify are the customer opinions on things. So maybe you need to do a bunch of customer surveys and give like a target ranking level for their opinion on the subjective need that might be there. So once we know all our needs and we have metrics that are written, sometimes our metrics could apply to more than one need. So we could have like metric 3 there, and the table that's shown there applies to need number 2 and need number 3. We can measure it once, but we can apply it to 2 different needs. Or maybe one metric is not sufficient to describe the need. So like need 2, there's actually 2 metrics that help determine if that need is being met. And then some needs only need one metric to determine if they're met. So we can make a matrix of the needs and the metrics in order to keep track of them all. And we can also do some competitive benchmarking in order to determine what type of metrics we want to use, or what target values that we want to use, and we want to be able to maybe compare our design to make sure that it's better than our competitors in order to want someone to buy it, right? So we want to make sure we can measure some things from our competitors. So there's different needs that we are trying to achieve. We can maybe measure a few different metrics based on different competitors' functions, and we can say, well, which one of these achieve that function best? And we can maybe use that as a target, or maybe not the very best one, but maybe a pretty competitive value there. So the number of dots there just indicates how well it meets that need. And there's a level of importance that's listed there too. So that's an example of how we maybe can maybe quantify some of our needs based on some of our competitors. So we'll do that competitive benchmarking in our project. And then we want to be able to set some ideal values, some target values that are going to be achievable, and then ones that we can that the whole team is going to accept and the customers will accept as the target values that we want. There's different ways that we can set those. We can set a limits, so it could be at least some value or at most some value. It could give a range of values between two target values, or we could specify an exact value. Usually hard to do that. Usually we have some type of tolerance on there. Or maybe it could be a discrete set of values, such as when we're using standard size things like bolts or other components that you buy off the shelf. We want to make sure that our design will be able to use those. And then in the end, we can reflect on those results, so we can determine, maybe members of the team are trying to get their own way. We can maybe call that gaming, where they're trying to influence the design in a certain way. We can maybe make sure that we're determined if we have one product we're trying to design, maybe multiple products. Is an average one good enough? When you think about like tools that you buy off the shelf, a lot of them are geared towards just the everyday user, but then there's contractors that might want to have higher end tools. So do we want to make a higher end product and a lower end average user product? So that could be a design choice that we want to make to have two different markets that we're selling our product to. Do we have any specs missing? Are we looking at all the needs, and do they reflect a successful product? So do these specs that we have written, is that going to be a good product in the end? Is it going to be something that we can market? So that's how we kind of go through the process of establishing our metrics, and we want to be able to use that on our constraints in order to set up some good specifications for our design. Thanks.